Thank you for your interest and involvement in the Franklin Park Comprehensive Plan. This presentation is designed to go over the key themes and recommendations from the draft comprehensive plan, which is available for public comment until Friday, May 5th, 2017. Some of you may be watching this in person at the draft plan open house on April 27th. You also may be watching it via the CMAP project webpage. Either is completely fine and you are still able to submit comments on the plan. We will go over how to do that on the coming slides. The purpose of the presentation and meeting are to display those comprehensive plan recommendations and to receive your feedback on them. The project webpage is the best central location for information on this process as it comes down to the end when it goes from being a draft plan to a final plan that's being considered for adoption. You see the link on the screen there, but really the best way to get to this screen, if you can remember it, is simply to go to a search engine and type in Franklin Park CMAP, and that should take you there. Here are the key findings. The strengths of Franklin Park, first and foremost, are its residents and businesses. Secondly, its location within the region near O'Hare Airport and adjacent to the city of Chicago. Numerous employment and amenities nearby, including a wonderful green space to the east in the Forest Preserve and the Des Plaines River. The currently active development market is a signal that Franklin Park is actually a very healthy community, one that is resilient, and though certainly has faced some challenges in recent years, is currently has a lot of momentum to ride, and we'll get into some of that as we go forward. Its diversity. Franklin Park has numerous different ethnicities and countries of origin that community feedback revealed should be celebrated. Its local housing stock. The Franklin Park local housing stock provides a lot of value. And within those neighborhoods, within those residential communities, it's usually very walkable with a connected sidewalk network and ways to make your way across town on foot, which not every community in the region can say. Some issues, however, that the community has said through the process it would like to see addressed are noise, congestion, and safety related to trains, specifically freight trains on the Canadian Pacific line, the one that's shared with the Milwaukee District West Metro line, flooding in parts of the village, a need for reinvestment in key areas. Like even though there is an active development market, there are still some key sites that stand out as needing reinvestment. The need to upgrade aesthetics, landscaping, and green space in some areas. The need for multiple types of high-quality housing, which your community input has said is necessary to attract and retain residents. And finally, no formal bike infrastructure or routes. And that's despite a fairly high rate of cycling participation in Franklin Park that we have observed. So this plan, in addition to being a comprehensive plan, kind of drills down into how to make your community more bikeable. All of this can be organized around four catch-all plan themes. The first is toward infrastructure improvement and coordination. This has been a big priority of the village for multiple years already, and this plan, as it looks to the next 10 years of the future, wants to see that be a priority. Regulatory changes, the key one there would be the development ordinances, so zoning, subdivision, signs, and those sorts of things, as well as things like the Complete Streets policy, which is currently being revised, or created, I should say. Interorganizational collaboration, that's everything from within the village departments to working with schools and park districts and library districts, as well as neighbor communities. And then last, image enhancement. Even though Franklin Park already works very hard to make it attractive to business and residents, there are other strategies that could be used to take that to the next level. I mentioned earlier an active development network. This map comes from the 2016 Year in Review brochure put out by the Department of Community Development and Zoning. And I won't walk through all of this, but as you can see, a lot of dots and locations on the screen, and you're seeing investment of all different types: industrial investment, commercial investment in new restaurants. This just shows that 2016 was a huge year in momentum, and in doing your comprehensive plan this year or finishing it in 2017, a real overarching goal is to build on that momentum. Throughout the plan, these key recommendations emerge. I mentioned regulatory changes as a theme, and under that is to update development ordinances and policies. Within housing and residential areas, you want to preserve existing housing where the character and the bones are good, and there's a lot of that throughout the village. There are some places where it's appropriate to fill in, as in redevelop housing. The third bullet is to boost the commercial corridors, and that can be done through some efforts that are village-wide and strategies that would apply across the whole, all of Franklin Park, and then a few area-specific efforts. Supporting and encouraging industrial modernization and character upgrades in the industrial areas. Improving circulation and safety near rail crossings. Encouraging alternatives to driving, and this is where those local bike routes come in. Holistic stormwater management solutions, and finally promoting sustainability. This is an existing land use map for the village. You can kind of see where uses are clustered, and in planning we determine uses in a way that it's probably pretty predictable and easy to understand, but and won't surprise you. But basically, the purple are industrial areas, the yellow is mostly housing, and the red are commercial, and those are your big three. But there are some others. The green are parks, and in any existing land use map, what a planner will notice are those kind of dark gray vacant parcels. Those are things that, as you plan, you definitely don't want to plan for any future vacancies. I mentioned that active development market, so maintaining this map and keeping it accurate has been kind of like hitting a moving target because there's so much development activity in Franklin Park. But this is the existing land use map that we have worked from. So this next screen is the future land use map. As you can see, all those vacancies went away, and we added a few different elements. So from screen to screen, I'm going to go back quickly just so you can see the change one more time. There really isn't any radical change in terms of altering the character of a neighborhood. However, I think the two things to really highlight on here are, number one, the creation of this commercial industrial flex land use category. This is something where there are key sites that can be prioritized for a modernized either warehouse or light industrial or complementary commercial business. It is designed to be a flexible land use category, but also whether it's recruiting a data center to build which is being done down here, or whether it's newly modernized industrial space, that category is designed to show where that's a priority. The other thing I want to highlight is this Silver Creek focus area that is designed to really kind of focus in on where Silver Creek related strategies are important. And the one point I want to make here is that a future land use map is not a zoning map. It is not on its own a regulatory binding commitment to how certain property can be used. That is what zoning is. However, this map, as part of the comprehensive planning process, is designed to help your staff and boards and commissions determine what zoning should be. It can also, because a comprehensive plan is designed to last about 10 years, this can also be amended as market conditions change, as community opinions change, and so on. It's also a good reminder as to why a comprehensive plan should be updated or redone every 10 years, and really a partial update should probably be done every 5 years. Let's talk about residential areas. Really, the strategies for Franklin Park's residential areas can be grouped into two different themes, preservation and infill. And under preservation, we suggest raising awareness of rehabilitation, maintenance, and other assistance programs, continuing to engage with multifamily areas and investing in their improvements. This is something the village already has done. A recent example of this is over in the West Mannheim Residents Association area, there were street and infrastructure improvement done through 2016, and those are the types of things that should be important going forward for the next 10 years. And then this last bullet is important: support aging in place. This is not unique to Franklin Park, but across the entire Chicago region. There are many communities where seniors are getting older, seniors who are currently homeowners and would like to age in their homes, not sell or move. And there are several strategies, which you can read about in the detail in the plan, that talk about ways to make that work well for the village. Under infill, the first strategy is to enhance the central residential area, which will be seen on the map on the next screen, to prioritize attractive mixed-use multifamily development in the downtown, and to match existing character with new development. So when there might be a home that goes up to replace where an existing home is, it's important to make sure that it fits with the character of that neighborhood. This is a residential areas map. I mentioned that central area. It's right here. So here are those two metro stations that are in downtown Franklin Park. The central one on the Franklin Park station of the Milwaukee District West line, and then the Belmont Avenue North Central Service line over here. Where you see R's are sites that staff have determined to have some residential potential, but staff in this plan are not committing to an explicit concept for any of those sites, just mentioning that there could be potential for housing there. Notice a slight difference between this yellow and then the orange. Orange here says medium density residential, and what that means is really no change from what currently exists, but just enhancing it and embracing it. Through many blocks between Franklin and Grand, though there are plenty of single-family detached homes, there are also 2-flat and 3-flat buildings. Residents throughout the engagement process said they liked that character of Franklin Park, and certainly through when there are new development opportunities, it makes sense to enhance that and preserve that. Where you can get some more residents living in this central area, you have more people who can, say, walk to your local commercial businesses on Grand, and up at Franklin, more people who can use the metro stations and really create a vibrant core of Franklin Park. Commercial areas. The big village-wide strategy is to create assistance opportunities for local businesses and foster cooperation. One example of this is trying to help businesses, or have the village and perhaps lending partners or someone help the businesses make physical improvements to their signs or facades. The plan does get into exactly how that works and how that has worked in other communities. For Franklin Avenue in the downtown district, really there are two simultaneous approaches. The one is to redevelop key sites where they're available and appropriate, and then on the other hand, to preserve where it's appropriate. Franklin Avenue is a very unique corridor that should be celebrated, and hopefully the strategies of the plan underscore that in a way that will not threaten any of those businesses or that character, but actually expand upon it. And even those buildings that are now approaching 60 and 70 years old actually have a historic merit to them. So there are some strategies that Franklin Park can do to make sure that Franklin Avenue corridor stays unique. The Grand Avenue corridor, the biggest recommendation is probably to make it a more complete street. And that involves a lot of different elements. If you're not familiar with the complete streets policy that's being developed, it's very transportation focused, and that's part of it. Making a corridor more walkable and perhaps slowing and calming traffic. But in addition to that, when the zoning ordinance is redone, concentrating on the form of Grand Avenue to make it more consistent, upgrading aesthetics, which can be done in partnership sometimes with private development, and there's plenty of private development opportunity on Grand. That digital realty project is one example of that. And then streetscaping, which is everything from benches to planters to lighting and banners. Finally, on Mannheim Road, the theme to take away is to focus on the frontage. And what we mean by the frontage is that are those areas of properties that are right up next to the sidewalk and are most visible from the street. Now, There's some properties on Mannheim that are set back pretty far from the road, so if you're driving through, you wouldn't even necessarily notice what's back there. But through planning, you can actually bring more development toward the front of the street. And even if it's not development, perhaps it is replacing parking with some more green space, landscaping, or the kinds of things that are attractive. A necessary partner for that will be IDOT, as the roadway is their jurisdiction. And the last is to take advantage of O'Hare, especially north of where I-294 crosses over Mannheim. The industrial areas plan focuses on the theme of modernizing space, which again is already going on in the village, and revitalizing brownfields, branding the different areas with their own names. So Franklin Park has some distinct industrial, I guess we'll say neighborhoods, because essentially these businesses, they're not all owned by one person or one developer like in an industrial park, but they're owned by many, and they're neighbor businesses. And hopefully by doing some increased branding and giving these areas a name, it can foster cooperation there. And you can see some of the labels as we took a stab at perhaps giving these areas a name. Adding more green space and landscaping, where possible, less impervious surface, and impervious is just a fancy planning word for parking lots, anything that doesn't let water drain through it, basically. You want to try to cut back on that so that water has a place to go. Last goal is to work toward regional employment and workforce development goals, which has very recently been a big priority of the village already. They are a regional leader in trying to foster a more prepared workforce. And using some policy work that our agency has done, we've determined certain sectors and industries that have a lot of growth potential in Chicagoland. And those are ones that we hope that communities like Franklin Park will focus on in terms of business recruitment and retention. This is and this is an example of a recent industrial modernization development in Franklin Park. This is the Panettone building that you can see from the tollway. Here's a bird's eye view of a rendering of the Digital Realty construction project along Grand Avenue. This is looking, I guess, south and southeast. This corridor through the middle is Grand. Though this is a wonderful reuse of space of that old Motorola building, hopefully this can be a catalyst too for redevelopment opportunities here and here, where you have parking lots and so on right across the street. Hopefully those can be prioritized as spots for future development of a different character, of local commercial. Transportation. There was a lot that came forward from the community about transportation issues, focusing around three areas. There's roadway and freight as one sub-theme. The number one issue of the whole plan is really to try to cut down on noise, congestion, and some of the safety impacts that result from the freight traffic that travels through Franklin Park. So the first bullet is to implement and fund the quiet zone improvements that I know the engineering department has been hard at work on for multiple years. They actually do have a plan that is approved by the Federal Railroad Administration to implement that quiet zone, but funding improvements is necessary. So they will need community support in prioritizing that necessary infrastructure. The other bullets are to support regional projects like the Elgin O'Hare Western Access and the Create Freight Project, improve local roads in the O'Hare industrial area, and last, to study downtown parking supply and demand. Unused parking doesn't provide a lot of value to communities, though it's important for it to be available for whether it's customers or visitors to that area or commuters. When there's too much of it, that's space that's not being used for anything else. So we're recommending that as a follow-up study to this plan, downtown parking as well as metro station area parking be looked at. Transit. Improve worker access to industrial areas, promote carpooling, ride-sharing, van pool, and paratransit. Most of that is provided by Pace Suburban Bus. And speaking of Pace, improve transfers between Metra and Pace, which will make them easier to use. The term in planning is supportive infrastructure, so that's everything from sidewalks to bus shelters to crossings. And this plan takes a look at where some improvements could be made in the long term and some in the short term. Pedestrian. One is to pursue a pedestrian grade separation downtown. And a grade separation is an engineering term for either an underpass or an overpass. CMAP not having any opinion on either which one of those is the best solution, but the need definitely came forward from the community to pursue something for pedestrians that will allow them to not be stuck when a train is stopped across the tracks in this area. Similar point is to improve access to metro stations, but a slightly different point. We're specifically talking about the Belmont North Central Station stop that could use a better pedestrian pathway to get to it from the Belmont sidewalk. And then the last bullet is to encourage private developers to consider bike, pedestrian, and transit users when they do their projects. This map shows the proposed bike network that we have. Both CMAP staff, TY Lin Engineering worked together on doing field observation and looking at traffic counts and determining where both on-street and off-street bike infrastructure would make sense. The key things to highlight in this map are a segment of what's called a multi-use side path here along Belmont. It's designed to connect over to the Des Plaines River Trail and run all the way into downtown Franklin Park. A side path is not on the street with the cars. It's basically next to the roadway. There's currently a sidewalk there now, but this would be a project that would upgrade that sidewalk to something wider with a different surface so that it would accommodate any user, from a jogger to a pedestrian to someone on a bike. The other thing to notice, there are suggested improvements for this segment of Franklin that are on street, this segment of Belmont this would be the west segment of Belmont through the west side of town. And then these dashed lines are kind of lighter touch bike improvements that, as it stands, cyclists could ride on them already, but by putting things up like bike route signs or maybe painting markings on the street, it makes it clear that bikes are encouraged to ride on those streets. And once you encourage cyclists to do that, you can have an efficient transportation network where people know which streets are safe for them to use. And then on the flip side, automobiles maybe would choose to take other streets if they wanted to, because they would know that those streets are less of on-street shared spaces. This plan was designed, or this bike plan or map is designed to connect to local destinations as well as the regional network. So schools and parks, obviously Schiller Woods, and then in the long term, there's an idea for connection to go all the way out toward Bensonville along Franklin. That would be wrapped in with another project. This street here, Scott Street, is designed to be a bike route to connect down to Melrose Park, which has been doing its own bike planning this year. Here's some images talking about what I mentioned. The proposed Belmont Avenue side path is here. The Franklin Avenue separated bike lane on this side, as well as an on-street bike lane here. And then down here, neighborhood greenways, which are signed routes with on-street markings. I should say, before we go too much farther with this, is to say these are concept renderings based on the planning and engineering work that's been done. The village and then the other transportation agencies like IDOT have not committed to these projects or funded them. These are concepts only at this stage. They're designed to show you what this could look like if you wanted to move forward. However, I just reiterate that the engineering has been done for these or has been considered. There may be some future engineering study that's necessary, but the consultants definitely laid out feasible and safe ideas. If you're really interested, there's a technical appendix at the end of the plan that explains why the consultants chose the routes that they did. And by consultants, I mean TY Lin Engineering. Last theme, which was very important to this plan, are natural areas and flooding. The two subtopics under this are to manage stormwater and flood risk and enhance open space. Prioritizing Silver Creek, you may have already seen on the land use map. We've talked about updating ordinances, taking advantage of redevelopment. So when new buildings are built, they often either have an incentive or just are more mindful of how to better take care of storm water. Some of them will provide additional storage of it on their new properties. Some of them will do other treatments that really will help the whole flooding issue across the community. This recommendation is more about, this expand programs recommendation is more about education and outreach to residents and businesses about things they can do within their own properties, small investments they can make that will help them on their own sites and help the village overall. Enhancing open space, first of all, requires partnering and encouraging cooperation among the park districts. There are 2 in Franklin Park. The second is to use pop-up green space or a pop-up park facility on available village sites. And by available, I mean those sites where maybe redevelopment is the long-term priority, but it hasn't happened yet. It's currently green. There can be things like community gardens or festivals, music, and so on that can happen on those spaces, especially in the warmer months, that will activate them now while they're awaiting redevelopment. But when redevelopment happens, either for those sites or others, it's possible in site planning to include some more green space, some open space. Zoning and site planning can really help with that. And then the last is to expand the amount of open space in the long term throughout Franklin Park. And that will happen if some of these previous bullet points are addressed. Also, in the very long term, there may be more opportunities, say, along river or creek bed and so on, to expand the amount of open space and perhaps restore habitats. Last theme, environmental sustainability, something that has already very much prioritized by village residents and their leaders. Here you can see the garden right next to Village Hall. But there are several specific objectives that this plan mentions for the long term. One is to preserve community forest. Another, inspire attractive landscaping, enhanced buffering, and something called depaving, which is where you actually replace some parking lot space with green space. This is something that the Village of Franklin Park could be a good candidate to explore. Continuing commitment to sustainability at village facilities and land. And finally, encouraging sustainable development and energy efficiency among private businesses. Here are the final steps, or the next steps for this process. We're going to incorporate your input that we received during this public comment period. We will present the final plan at a public hearing, which is actually a plan commission meeting. Not exactly sure which month that will be, but we're hopeful that could happen. That could happen perhaps at the June plan commission meeting, with hopefully village board adoption of the plan in July. And again, that is assuming that the reception to the draft plan here is warm and that the edits yet to be made are fairly light. And then the final point is centered around implementation. So bringing plan ideas to reality, and that is something that will the village staff, with some assistance from CMAP, but mostly village staff and a lot of partners who are laid out in the plan, will be involved with. You can submit your comments 2 ways, either in person at the open house. You can write those comments down on slips on the tables in the room, or you can email the CMAP project manager. There's the link on the screen, jcarlisle@cmap.illinois.gov. Thank you very much for your interest and for participating.